We've reviewed the new Mazda 3 in a couple of guises here on the CarGurus UK YouTube channel, and in both cases we've come away really impressed. In fact, we think it's one of the best family cars you can buy. The question in today's review though is whether you should perhaps forget about the Mazda 3 and instead go for one of these. It's the all-new Mazda CX-30. In this CarGurus UK review, we'll take a closer look at the CX-30 to find out. But first, here's a reminder to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications by ringing the bell icon so that you know when our new videos go live. And of course, if you like this video, please do hit the like button and let us know what you think of the CX-30 in the comments below. So what exactly is the CX-30? Well, you can think of it as kind of an SUV crossover type car. It's designed to rival things like the Nissan Qashqai, the Kia Sportage and the Seat Ateca. In terms of Mazda's lineup, it slots in between the smaller and cheaper CX-3 and the larger and more expensive CX-5. Now both of those cars are really highly regarded, so that all bodes well for the CX-30. Just like the rest of Mazda's range, the CX-30 is smartly styled. True, it might look fairly squat for a supposed crossover, but it certainly doesn't lack presence thanks to its prominent grille, curved bodywork and tough-looking body cladding. So what about practicality then? Because after all, if you're looking at cars like the CX-3 and the Mazda 3, you'd probably say that interior space is one of their biggest weaknesses. Note the electric tailgate here, that comes as standard on all but the entry-level CX-30. Right, so boot space. The good news is it's bigger in here than it is in a Mazda 3. In a Mazda 3 you get 358 litres of boot space. In a CX-30 it's 430 litres. The bad news is that if you look at the CX-30's direct competitors, cars like the Seat Ateca, in most cases they offer even more room. Seat folding options are limited to just that. The seats fold. What you can't do is slide them forward to create extra boot space, and even when folded there's a slight ridge in the floor. Now, combine this fairly standard sort of practicality with the fact that once you're in the CX-30, you don't really feel like you're sitting up particularly high either. And to me, this actually feels more like a traditional hatchback than it does an SUV or crossover. It also has a slightly shorter wheelbase than the Mazda 3, so any expectations you might have had that you're going to get more room in the back of this don't really play out. So I'm 5'11", this is set for me, and I mean I fit okay, but there's not a lot of room to play with in terms of leg room. The headroom's actually all right. So if you're coming to this from a CX-3, you're going to feel like you've got more space, no doubt about it. But if you're coming to it having also tested a Seat Ateca or a Kia Sportage, it's not going to feel as roomy. Where you can't fault the CX-30 compared with other crossovers is in the finish of the interior, which features lots of premium feeling materials and feels built to last. I'll climb into the front of the CX-30 and you'll be struck by how upright and actually how high this dash is. So if you're a shorter driver or indeed a shorter passenger, you'll probably want to crank the seat height up. That's nice and easy to do, and there's lots of range in the adjustment as well, as is there in the steering. And the pedals are really nicely aligned, so the driving position is fundamentally excellent. Now in terms of the way Mazda presents its interiors these days as well, I really think it's nailed it in terms of combining something that looks smart and has lots of tech and is still very minimalist, but is also very easy to use. So I've got this separate panel of heater controls, for example. I don't have to go into the screen to control the heating. The dials are very clearly laid out, and the infotainment system itself, which is controlled via here, is very easy to use. Controlled via a rotary controller, the CX-30's touchscreen makes it pretty simple to access different functions on the move and can be easily paired with your smartphone via Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Now if we're talking about niggles, you might say that this screen being 8.8 inches looks a little bit small in such a chunky interior, but it's a minor thing really, it certainly doesn't affect usability. Also, have a look at things like these blue accents on the doors and across the top of the dash and the frameless rear view mirror. These are all things that, along with the really solid build quality, help to really lift the interior of the CX-30. In fact, I think this feels more like something you might find in a premium German car than it does something from a mainstream model. As for drivability, well, let's find out. So, do I feel like I'm driving an SUV? No, I don't really, to be honest. For a start, I haven't got four-wheel drive. You can have four-wheel drive in a CX-30, but this one doesn't. But actually more than that, it's the fact I don't really feel like I'm elevated up over other traffic. So this just feels more like a hatchback, to be honest. Even compared with the CX-3, I feel like I'm sitting a bit lower. What is good though is the head-up display that comes as standard on the CX-30. Every CX-30 gets this head-up display. It's a really good, clear system. I think that's a really, really good move by Mazda. I just wish it had applied the same method to its reversing camera, which only comes on higher spec models. And I say that because rear visibility in this car is not great, particularly over the shoulder. So actually having a reversing camera is not just for convenience, it could almost be considered as a safety measure. Speaking of safety, all Mazda CX-30s come with blind spot monitoring, traffic sign recognition and radar cruise control as standard, helping the CX-30 to record an extremely high score in Euro NCAP's industry standard crash tests. Now, the fact that the CX-30 doesn't feel particularly SUV-like to drive might be disappointing to some people, but actually if you value ride and handling, it might be very good news because you don't get any of the wallow or the body lean that you get in some SUVs. Actually, the CX-30 feels really responsive and keen and agile. The ride is good. It's just generally a very satisfying car to drive. I also like the steering, which has a nice natural rate of response. It's not too fast, it's not too slow. And this 6-speed manual gearbox is just a delight. The shift action is fantastic. It's a good job too, because if the CX-30 has a weakness, it's in the pulling power of the engines. It's a petrol-only lineup and it kicks off with the 2-litre SkyActiv-G unit. Now that's 122 horsepower, naturally aspirated petrol. Now I've driven that engine in the Mazda 3 and to be honest it feels a bit flat even in that car. So in the 50 kilogram heavier CX-30, I just wonder if it might feel a bit lacking. Instead, today we've got the SkyActiv-X engine. Again, it's a 2-litre naturally aspirated petrol, but this time it combines compression and spark ignition, the idea being that you get the best bits of diesel and petrol combined in one engine. Now for a more detailed explanation of how the SkyActiv-X engine works, you can click the link at the top of the video now and you'll be taken to our review of the Mazda 3 SkyActiv-X. What you need to know as far as this engine goes in the CX-30 is that it's quieter at low revs than in the Mazda 3 and it's much livelier than the lower powered SkyActiv-G unit. It's still not exactly a fast car though, and to get the claimed 0 to 62 mile per hour time of 8.5 seconds you do have to rag it, to use a technical term. Now if you're prepared to use the revs then you can make decent progress, where the SkyActiv-X engine seems to suffer a bit, despite supposedly having the mid-range pull of a diesel is in the mid-range pull. Basically, it just feels like it needs a turbocharger, and then it would be really good. Now, where it is really good is in fuel economy. We've been getting around 45 to 48 miles per gallon on average, which for a 2-litre naturally aspirated petrol engine is excellent. So should you be buying one of these over a standard Mazda 3? Well, if you're looking at the price difference between the two, it's actually not that much. It's roughly £1,100 more to upgrade to the CX-30 from the same specification Mazda 3. So actually the choice is probably going to come down to more whether you prefer the styling of this chunkier CX-30 or you need the extra boot space, for example. Now, actually the decision probably boils more down to whether you're going to choose a CX-30 over one of its direct rivals. And in that regard, this very much fits the mold of modern Mazdas in that to get the sharp, really quite lovely driving dynamics and this smart styling, you're going to have to compromise on a bit of interior space, particularly in the back of the car. And if you're prepared to do that, then the good news is that this is another really solid offering from Mazda. So then, Mazda 3 or Mazda CX-30, which would you choose? Let us know in the comments and please do subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this one. And remember, when it comes to finding your next car, you can easily find great deals from top-rated dealers at cargurus.co.uk.